we couldn't let another day go by or go into the weekend without talking about Ilhan Omar, right? Like, her whole thing is going global. They're looking at bank records in Dubai, in Somalia, in Kenya. They want to know about a deal in South Africa. Whoa! No wonder she's so willing to leave the country right about now. We're going to talk about Ilhan Omar coming up. We got a status check on the war. The president says, look, I think we've won this thing. The Strait of Hormuz will fix itself. We'll talk about that, including, once again, his hesitancy he is showing towards NATO. You knew that was coming. And, well, there was this little moment, which I just want to play for you just because it's funny and it's Friday and we can all use a little humor here. He's certainly got it in spades. Watch. He's being asked by the Fox reporter about whether the construction going on at that ballroom bothers him at all. Take a listen.
When they're doing the construction, does it ever wake you up?
It makes me happy when I hear those pile drivers. My wife doesn't love it, but I love the sound. I love the sound of concrete. I love the sound of pile drivers. How are you, Mr. President? One question. How are you?
You know, once a builder, always a builder, right? You know what makes me happy? When I see our portfolios doing really, really well at 76 Research. You know that stock I keep telling you about? And I was like, you know, should we tell everybody what it is? Well, we decided to. On the 76 Research podcast, which you can check out after this show by following our channel at 76 Research. Of course, you can also just go and get the newsletter, 76research.com, $1 a month for the first 2 months with code word dollar. Welcome to the program, everyone. So good to have you here. And like I said, I'm in this thing with Ilhan is kind of blowing up. I knew it would. I absolutely knew it would. I'm a little impatient. I wish it would go faster, but at least we have this to report to you today. The investigation into Ilhan Omar's money laundering allegations has gone global. All right, I want to share with you that they are now investigating her and her husband and any financial dealings that they had in the likes of Kenya, Dubai, and Somalia. There's other countries in there as well, including South Africa. And this is what I suspected they needed to look into all along, because we've talked about this, right? If it is true that this is really a money laundering operation, this sort of private, you know, venture capital firm that the hubby has, Timmy Minette, if it was to be what we believed, which was possibly some kind of sham, and it's not just me, I mean, boy, Steve Forbes just tore to shreds when he came on the program just a couple of weeks ago. If this is some kind of front for something, then he wants a high valuation on that venture capital firm, which is why, you know, he's saying, you know, they're worth like some $30 million. He's putting very high valuations on that firm, even though it doesn't gel with what his partner said actually during the same exact year. I'll get to that. But the high valuation is designed so that if somebody wants to buy shares in that venture capital firm and have an interest in that business, he's got something to sort of point to and say, oh, well, it is worth this much. And the concern, of course, would be that people are buying shares in that venture capital firm so that they can possibly get access to something like Feeding Our Future. $250 million, right, went to Feeding Our Future right out of Ilhan's district. And she's the one that introduced that bill on the day that she, by the way, announced her marriage to Timmy Minette. Quite the timing. I kept saying it must have been an expensive wedding, right? But the fear is, or the allegation is, that some of that money was making its way to offshore accounts. And so this is what's coming to fruition right now. The New York Post has done some pretty good reporting on this. I want to give them a plug here. They pointed out that the business partner was actually getting a $10,699 air ticket to Dubai after talks of a deal there. So Dubai came up. Apparently there was something about building solar panels in Africa. No wonder she was so upset about USAID. Remember the USAID thing? I mean, this woman, I suspect, these are my own allegations and intuition about her. I suspect she loved USAID because you could ride that one to the bank all day long. And then she loved this Feeding Our Future and all these various programs. I mean, the 34,000% autism spike in the state of Minnesota, and nobody blinked an eye. All of this being fraudulent money. It was like, let's take from Uncle Sam, let's take from Uncle Sam, and maybe we hide some of this all around the world. Uncle Sam, whether it be, you know, let's take and from USAID, which is from the taxpayer, or let's take from the American taxpayer and pretend that we're giving it to feed kids in Minnesota. All of this is really disturbing. So I don't know if this is a picture of her in South Africa, but they were over there to do a deal in South Africa to build solar panels in South Africa. Good work if you can get it, right? Comer has been all over this from the beginning. His team is continuing to look into these investigations all over the world, as is our Treasury Department, you guys, as is our White House right now. So they're closing in. And again, it can't come fast enough for so many of us. But I want to go back to Comer, who's explaining why he initially had those thoughts that it might be a money laundering operation that she and her husband were really running. Watch.
Yeah. There's a thing called money laundering where people have businesses and they deposit, lots of cash. Again, I'm not accusing them of any wrongdoing, but she should answer a simple question. If any member of Congress is asked what business their family's involved in, I've never seen one fail to answer it. That's not a hard question. My husband has a private equity firm and he's done exceptionally well in the last 12 months. She won't answer that question. And everybody in America suspects foul play here.
Right.
And again, we're going to find out. It's not going to be hard to figure out what business he's in and where the money came from. So that's going to be a central part of our entire Minnesota fraud investigation, because she is the leader in Congress, in the district, in the congressional district, where the overwhelming majority of the welfare fraud is taking place. Her name, as well as the Attorney General Keith Ellison's name, have been mentioned as people of interest. I'll put it like that, Jesse. So we're gonna follow through on this, and I think she's gonna have some difficult questions to answer.
All right. Well,
difficult questions indeed. And again, I just want to reiterate, if you're just joining us right now on the Trish Regan Show, make sure you subscribe. Ilhan Omar's probe, the investigation into Ilhan Omar's alleged money laundering, has just gone global. So now they are soliciting bank records from Somalia, from Kenya, from South Africa, and also from Dubai. Now, why is this so significant, and can they get these bank records? Look, I realize some of these places can be corrupt, but I'll tell you, they'll fold in 2 seconds because she is an American citizen. I've done a lot of research into this. I spoke to some money laundering experts. I spoke to a source who tracks terrorist financing. And basically, all of these banks around the world, they will fold in 2 seconds. So it's maybe if you were a foreigner and you put money in a Swiss bank account, the Swiss aren't quite what they used to be in terms of secrecy, but you might have had some protection. But here's the thing. If you're an American putting money into a Swiss bank account, they fold in 2 seconds, because the Swiss are like, here you go. Okay, woo, don't want to have anything to do with that. And the reason for that is because we have the ability, US dollar, King dollar, thank you very much. We're going to keep that one going as long as we can. As King Dollar, we have the ability to shut them all off. We can just shut everything off wherever we need to. So all of these banks, eventually the clearinghouse is US of A. So they do not mess with us. All right, so the Somalian bank, the banks in Dubai, the banks in South Africa, the banks in Kenya, when we say, hey, jump, they say, okay, how high? You need her bank records. She's an American citizen, at least for now. He is an American citizen, Timmy Minette. The other guy, Haler, is an American citizen. And so all of these banks will immediately, I don't want to get you too excited, but all of my sources have said this over and over and over and over again. When you're tracking financing, this is the good news. And we heard, by the way, Treasury Secretary Bessent say this just a couple of weeks ago. He said, hey, you know what? We're going to find all the money, because there is a money trail. And even though you have $700 and some odd million leaving in a 2-year time span, the city of Minneapolis, in suitcases, you can still go to all those places that they sent the money, and all of those places will comply. So we have the law on our side in this situation, or shall we say our heft, our might, as the world's hegemonic superpower, that basically, you don't mess with us. Iran's learning that the hard way. We'll get to that. The president's like, yeah, there's nothing left of them. They can play around in the Strait of Hormuz. That's going to straighten itself out, pun intended, pretty darn soon. Back to Miss Money Laundering Queen, as it is alleged, okay? So here, you're looking at her own filings, guys. They're not even smart enough to try and hide it. So she's the one who said, oh yeah, I'm worth $30 million. Oh, and then tried to take that away, putting out a tweet after everybody was like, well, gee, we didn't know you were like Miss Moneybags. And she's like, no, I'm not. I really don't have anything. Well, you better believe she does have a lot of stuff, a whole lot of stuff, right? Because when you look at these filings that she put out herself, guess what? It's a net worth of nearly $30 million. Well, how do you get to that kind of valuation? How do you get to that valuation? If in fact, you think about where she was just a couple years prior, and it was like there were $42 in that bank account for this private equity firm that, trust me, is not a private equity firm. Just go to their front page on the website. It says exclusive opportunities for global operators. Whoa! Global operators indeed, right? They were trying to like marry up people to do some lobbying efforts. That's what it was. And so, it may have been more. Like it may have been a whole lot more. And that is the allegation. And that is what they're pursuing. And now we know that they're not just pursuing it here in the US of A, but they're going all around the world and they're demanding bank records as we speak. And this guy is bad news. We've talked about this. He is very bad news. Timmy, that is. And the business partner, for goodness sakes. They had that cannabis venture and they were sued multiple times with allegations of fraud. That wasn't very good. This is the business partner, I should point out. He's a guy named Will Haler, who was the co-founder and CEO of the quote-unquote venture capital firm, where it says that they've managed $60 billion. I mean, the number's so ludicrous. It could be 80, it could be 800. It makes absolutely no sense. There's no way that these guys have managed $80 billion. It's insane. So he was asked, actually, in one of those lawsuits, alleging fraud. I repeat, alleging fraud against his previous companies, whether it be the cannabis one or the winery one, but they certainly like the vice industry. We're looking for a gambling one next, I suppose. So he was asked by the attorney for the plaintiff, does Rose Lake Capital being the company that's the venture capital firm that's now being investigated all over the world, does Rose Lake have assets under management? And he said, this is a bizarre answer, under a legal term of art, I think the answer is no. Yeah. Nobody said he was smart. Does Rose Lake have capital? The lawyer followed up and he says, Rose Lake has a small set of equity positions in a handful of companies. So they've made small investments, you see, in a handful of companies, but nothing that are assets that we control through management. Okay, so you're really not a venture capital firm then, are you? Okay, well, we already established that. As for the approximate value, he responded, I would say de minimis in sort of ownership controls or investments. And then he agreed it was under $1 million, and then he couldn't tell you when he was asked if it was 500,000. I mean, he's out there saying they don't have any investments. All while Ms. Ilhan Omar and Mr. Timmy Minette, the new hubby number 3, because, this girl doesn't mess around. There were 2 Ahmeds before she met Timmy. Anyway, and allegedly a brother. Anyway, she does not mess around, right? She's having a $30 million net worth on paper, according to what she's telling the folks there at the ethics committee. You understand how messed up this is, how bad this is. So Willie, who's the business partner, says, yeah, Rose Lake is worth like nothing. We don't have any investments. And she's saying, oh no, we got all kinds of investments. Just look at this. We're now worth $30 million on paper. So which is it? All right. We need to find out exactly where the $250 million from feeding our future went, guys. And I know Tim Burchett, I saw something on Twitter today. He's absolutely furious, saying, come on already. So the good news that I have to report is that they are doing their due diligence. I know it can't go fast enough, but this is a decently complicated scheme, not that complicated because, they're not that smart. I've told you that. Steve Forbes said the same thing the other day. They're just not that smart. He's not that smart. And so they thought they could get away with something, but I don't think it's happening. Again, think about what is being alleged here, that they were in some kind of business to be building solar panels in Africa. Really? All right. And that's why this guy is getting a $10,699 air ticket to Dubai. I assume that is first class after talks about a deal there. Yeah, solar panels in Africa. So what was that? USAID? What was that? Money that was getting skimmed off the top and like possibly going to some other front or venture. This is really bad stuff for Ms. Ilhan Omar and Timmy Minott. You now have a White House task force. You now have the Treasury Department and Scott Bessent and his team. And you have Comer and the Ethics Committee. So you add it all up, it's going to spell very big trouble for Ilhan Omar. And again, don't forget what the penalty is. It's jail and denaturalization. I guess you can take your choice on which comes first. I would imagine it would be jail and denaturalization. So you go to jail and then you get booted out of the country. Timmy will just go to jail if this allegation proves to be true. So it's no wonder she wants to leave the country. I mean, if they're looking at you for money laundering and you've just found out that this money laundering investigation has gone global, maybe you'd want to leave the country too. It does not surprise me that she's recently come out and said, oh, you know, what's the big deal? I'll just leave. They keep threatening me with denaturalization. So what? Well, yeah, she's like, I'm going to have to leave. But you know what? We can find you. We can. Because you are technically still a U.S. citizen. And because you're a U.S. citizen, all those banks all around the world, they have to play ball with us. And when we ask for your bank records, they will fold fast. It's actually, in a money laundering scheme, not an asset to be a U.S. citizen. Because when the U.S. wants to figure out where the money went, they can figure it out. They're like the only entity and the only country that can do that. Because again, we're the clearinghouse for the world, ladies and gentlemen, home of the U.S. Treasury, home of the U.S. dollar. So Ilhan, yeah, you keep planning that retirement. I don't think it's going to be where you want.
No worry. I don't know how they take away my citizenship and like deport me, but I don't even know like why that's such a scary threat. Like, I'm not the 8-year-old who escaped war anymore. I'm grown. My kids are grown. Like, I can go live wherever I want.
Yeah, you keep telling yourself that. I don't think you will be, not if this all comes to fruition. I mean, by the way, she figures I might as well help myself on the way out the door. Again, if these allegations are what I think they are, and she's got her hand in the piggy bank the whole way around, you know, she's looking for more money right now. So today she's learning, of course, as we all have, that it might be another $200 billion for the war effort. Pete Hegseth from the Pentagon has said, look, we're going to need more. It costs money to win these things. And she's saying, no way, right? Why? Why would I give that when there's no money for universal health care or to end hunger? You tried to end hunger in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. And what happened, Ilhan? What happened? Oh, you ended hunger for Somalia, maybe. The families back home in Somalia. You ended hunger for a few select ones that had their hand in the piggy bank. I suspect alongside you. I mean, we know 79 people have now gone to jail. They have been convicted, including a former campaign staffer that worked with the hubby. Talking about incestuous. So she says, well, we're told there's no money for universal health care or to end hunger in this country, but somehow $200 billion more for a war will likely move through Congress without question. Not another penny for another endless war. I mean, she couldn't give enough to Ukraine. I mean, just saying, right? Like, she's like, can I write the check? How much and USAID, can we please get some money for some transgender operas in Colombia? Like now? We need millions for that stuff. And what was that about, right? Like, where was all that money going? Fraud. I'm telling you, this is fraud city, all right? We're not stupid. We know exactly what's up. And your jig is up, okay? It's corruption. It's fraud. The president called it out the other day. This was fantastic. I got to play it again. Play it again, Sam.
You suppose then that leaders in recent memory haven't looked at the systemic amount of fraud
because
that's
they're
taking
crooked.
place? And
because they're crooked. They make money They gain power, they use it for power. Like with the Somalians, they vote in a block, 100%. They make a deal with the Somalians, they all vote because they're on a gravy train. It's money first, power second. A lot of people say power first. No, it's money first, power second. Do you ever see where, like, Mercedes, people come over from Somalia, they have no money, and now they're buying Mercedes-Benz cars, okay? It's more cash goes out of the Minnesota airport than any other place in the world or so. We're going to find it. And Minnesota's really bad. The governor's corrupt. The attorney general's totally corrupt. Just like the New York State attorney general, Letitia James. She's a highly corrupt person. Bragg, the DA, is a corrupt person. They're all corrupt. These are corrupt people. And we got too many of them in our country. And we have to expose them, and we have to catch them. And if these two guys can't, these are high IQ people. I've always liked high IQ. These are high IQ people. If they don't do it, we're going to go a long way, fellas, to find somebody else that's going to. We have no choice. If honestly, and they may not. The pressure's on.
If they can't do it, who can? You know, if they can't do it, who can? And there's a lot to go through there. And there's a lot that's about to come out. And I suspect this is why, you know, she's suddenly kind of not so adverse to the idea of leaving the country. Her hubby's already missing apparently $403,000 in taxes. And that's not from his business, apparently, because I can't quite tell that his business is actually making any money, but that's probably because of the campaign money. You see that number on the screen? $878,000 she was paid between 2018 and 2020. So, you know, $400 and change a year, which is a lot for a campaign manager. But, you know, he was the BF. He was the boyfriend. And then he got a promotion and she got a big payday because as soon as she just figured out, hey, I can marry the guy and I'll just pay him. And it becomes part of the family assets. She decided to pay him, and big time did she pay him. $2.8 million. $2.8 million. I've told you guys this before. This is unheard of, okay? Unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. In campaign world, like, you don't make that kind of money. It's just not, it doesn't happen. People were flipping out because Joe Biden's campaign manager was going to get $4 million if he won. Well, my God, he deserved $4 million if he won. But this guy didn't deserve $3 million for getting his wife elected. But his wife probably figured, well, I deserve it, right? I am. After all, Ilhan Omar, poor girl from Somalia that came here, I've figured out how to do it too. That one's bad, okay? That we know is bad. Like, I cannot begin to tell you how bad that is, that she was paying her husband, let's call it $3, all right? $3 million, 2.8. I mean, I'm sure they had at least $200,000 in expenses somewhere along the way. She's paying him these big bucks, and it's all going back to her own darn pot. It's disgusting, you guys. Absolutely disgusting. Coco, thank you so much for the super chat. I'm seeing lots of super chats. It must be because it's late at night. This is kind of a surprise time. And John, you said that you haven't seen me in a while. So welcome back to the show. It's good to have so many people here. This is a big story, guys. A very, very big story. And listen, I get it. We want her behind bars now. We want all this proven out and these allegations to actually be cemented into something more. But this is something that I'm just going to tell you. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the Treasury Department, to the White House task force that's investigating fraud, and also to the House Ethics Committee and James Comer, because you've got to actually get all these bank records, and they will. They'll get them in my sources say you can get them in like a week. All right, that if you go to a bank anywhere in the world and you say, hey, I need bank records for Trish Regan. Trish Regan is an American citizen. If Trish Regan were from Argentina, then you wouldn't be able to get Trish Regan's bank records from Switzerland in the event. And to be clear, I don't have any banks outside of the country. Thank you very much. So just so we establish that. But if I did, you wouldn't be able to get Trish Regan from Argentina's bank records in Switzerland because the Swiss wouldn't, they'd say like, tell it to the hand. But if it's Trish Regan from the United States of America and she has an account in Switzerland, even Switzerland is like, whoa, okay, this is the U.S. Treasury Department. We're not going to mess around with this because you know what? They can just like freeze everything. And by the way, speaking of freezing everything, that's exactly what we're doing with the Iranians right now. Ooh, I got a lot to tell you on that. Treasury Department, you know, they can be really, really, really powerful. Who knew that Treasury was such a sexy job? Anyway, I want to just also mention she's under investigation for a few other things. Do you see the certificate above my shoulder? That would be the second Ahmed. Yeah, it's good that way. You don't have to confuse their names or anything. Ahmed 1, Ahmed 2. Ahmed 2, that's believed to be possibly, maybe, her brother. Now, this is an allegation that's coming from many people. It has been reported out in places like the Daily Mail. I think New York Post has done some reporting on this as well. Harmeet Dillon recently on our friend Benny's show said, look, this is under investigation, not by my department, but by another department. So it is believed that her citizenship is being investigated. I mean, not just because of the fraud stuff, et cetera, but also because of these allegations that there may have been fraud involved in her marriage. And it didn't even have to be her brother, because if this was not a true marriage, boom, like the government takes this one super, super duper seriously. And this is grounds for deportation and denaturalization. But the president thinks there's some there with the with the second Ahmed, a la the brother. Watch.
That's crazy. And Ilhan Omar, I hope this is part of it, but she married her brother supposedly. I mean, there's a lot of documentation. That means she's here illegally and she's a congresswoman. And I hope you're going to be looking at that, or somebody is, all right? Because she's one of the ringleaders here. She's bad news, really bad news. She's so bad for our country. Anyway, JD, please say a few words.
Yep. Okay. So he's pointing back to this marriage certificate. And this is one that numerous members of Congress have come out and said, listen, she's got to go. And it's not just, you know, the House of Representatives. You got senators now, senators that are saying, hey, if there's fraud there in that second marriage, or if there was the intention of fraud, then we got problems. Big, big, big problems. Big, big trouble right here in Kansas City. Music Man. Great, great, great musical. I'm like a savant on music, by the way. I'm a former opera singer, so I have a lot of like weird show tunes and jazz tunes and all kinds of things in my head. I mean, you name it. There's Irish folk music, country music, every kind of music except rap. I really don't like rap. I really don't. I mean, it's like, to me, the lyrics alone, I'm sorry, and there's no singing. It's just a beat, whatever. Okay, reminder, subscribe, share, like. Didn't I say the Treasury Department is like all over this, and then some? Yeah, our Treasury Department isn't messing around. Scott Bessent is like, okay, I know how we're winning the war. The Treasury knows how we're winning the war. All they have to do is look at the money flows. They got people defecting left and right. These leaders in Iran, they're not too happy about their bank accounts getting frozen in real time. It's going down. And here is Scott Bessent on my former colleague, the most wonderful woman, Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business. She's just a real great reporter. Here she is with Scott Bessent talking about all those accounts getting shut off in real time.
This is nonsense, Maria. You know, for the regime, you know, we're back to the stuff of Baghdad Bob here. You know, the regime is in collapse, and the people are starting to turn against them. We're starting to see defections at Treasury. We now know where the Iranian leadership bank accounts are, and you know, those are being frozen. And you know, we will hold them and see who comes forward in terms of defections. But you know, we're starting to see defections throughout the regime, and that's how this ends. So you know, the idea of some tolling arrangement is ridiculous. What President Trump is talking about, and to be clear, he has focused on Karg Island since 1988, before the Shah fell, that the U.S. should be focused on that. He is laser focused on it. As I said, there was a bombing campaign last week. The military assets on Kyrgyz Island were destroyed. And the other thing I can tell you, if you're an oil worker, you don't want to work there. So all the oil workers there are being coerced to stay there. And, we will see what happens with whether that eventually becomes a U.S. asset.
Interesting. A U.S. asset. So he kind of dangles that one out there. He's talking about that really, 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 really important island. It's like the be all end all. It's like the only thing that actually matters in all of Iran. I mean, beside the strait, of course, but it's like this one island that they have where they produce all of their oil, and all of their oil is there, and it's a really, really big, important money center for them. And the president has already struck assets there, and he's like, hey, if you guys keep it up, I'm going to just take the whole thing out. He doesn't really want to do that, and I'll explain that. He doesn't want to do that because that would actually drive oil prices higher, right? Because he's taking then global supply out of the market. The fact that the Strait of Hormuz is closed, Rob and I talked about this at 76 Research on that show this week, which is up today, by the way, if you want to go check it out. At 76 Research is the handle for YouTube. But we talked a lot about this because the Strait of Hormuz is important strategically. It controls 20% of the world's oil supply. 20% flows through that. So in other words, if you suddenly can't get oil to China, if you can't get oil to India, it doesn't matter as much in the here and now to us, right? Like we have our supply, plus we just got Venezuela's, right? We got oil coming up the wazoo. So we got all this oil. The only thing is, like, if 20% is not getting through to the other players, then it does, because it is a commodity, have an overall effect on the pressure of the price. And so that's why you see oil prices going up. And the president doesn't want that, obviously. He's made it very clear it's temporary, which I fully, wholeheartedly agree with. In the end, like, this is going to be awesome, right? In the end, it's going to be great because you're going to take out the threat of Iran, which has dominated the fear factor in the Middle East. And so this is a huge, 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 huge moment for America. And the president's saying, hey, you know what? We've won. We have won this one, guys. We have won it. And, he's also talking about possibly pulling the plug on the UN because they're not doing much to help us win this. I want to get to that in just a second. But first, let's have a quick shout out for one of our great new sponsors on the show, Kickoff. Kickoff. Have you heard of these guys? We want to talk about them a little bit because Kickoff is a great platform for you guys to be able to improve should you need to improve your credit. Oh, you don't want bad credit. No. But, sometimes it happens. I get it. Like, we all go through different challenges in life, and it's possible that you had an illness, or maybe, you were young once and you did some stupid stuff. So how do you fix that? It's critical to fix it because you know what? I'll tell you, if you get good credit, you get better loan rates on everything, and you always want to get the lowest mortgage rate, the lowest car loan rate, you name it. So you want to improve your credit however you can. And this is a company that's helping you do that. It's called Kickoff, and you can go and learn more on their actual website by going to getkickoff.com. I'm going to put it right up here on the screen. Getkickoff.com. It's always interesting watching Trish type and speak at the same time. And you know it. There goes the typo. So it is, once again, ladies and gentlemen, getkickoff.com/Regan. So this is a new sponsor, and they said to me, we need for you to read this disclaimer. And I'm like, seriously? So I tried to read it as fast as I could. And let's see how I did. I promise I went as fast as I could. Must sign up via getkickoff.com/Regan, REGAN, to activate offer. Offer applies to new Kickoff customers first month only, subject to approval. Offer subject to change. New car financing savings based on 2025 Chevrolet Silverado MSRP with a down payment of $10,000 and 5-year financing for subprime borrowers versus those over 600. Nationwide APR average for new cars. Actual savings and financing factors may vary. Source Experian 2025 April. Average first year credit report impact of plus 86 points between August 24 and August 25 for Kickoff Credit Account users who started with a score below 600, who paid on time, and who had no delinquencies or collections added to their credit profile during the period. Late payments may negatively impact credit score. Individual results may vary. Woo! Okay. Go, Trish. That's fast. Let's see if I can do it faster next week. you know, it's a financial product. We got to get the disclosures in there. Sorry, what can I say? Anyway, we welcome their support. And yes, if you want to improve your credit, definitely go check them out at getkickoff.com/Regan, REGA, and use that because that helps me. Anyway, the UN is not looking very good right now. It's really kind of fallen, if one can imagine, even lower in terms of its status. Right? Like we none of us had much use for the UN ever. Donald Trump was the first one to like call them out to their face. It was really fantastic. Remember years ago, I'm not going to play the clip, but he like sat there and looked at them straight in the face and he's like, yeah, you're not paying your fair share. You're not paying your fair share. You know, you're supposed to contribute, 4% of GDP. You're not doing it. You're not even close. Not even that. I don't think it was 4%. Like, we're the only ones paying any of this. So Donald Trump is over NATO. He's so sick of them. He's like, for goodness sakes, I knew you guys were no good. I knew you were bad news. But then, lo and behold, I actually need you for something. Like, I don't really need you. But it would be nice to have a little bit of moral support along the way, and I can't even get that, right? So here he is, dinging NATO yet again, inching closer and closer to saying, you know, I'm just going to rip the whole thing out.
It's a simple military maneuver. It's relatively safe, but you need a lot of help in the sense of you need ships, you need volume. And NATO could help us, but they so far haven't had the courage to do so. And others could help us, but, you know, we don't use it. You know, at a certain point, it'll open itself. At a certain point.
You know what he means by that? Like, at a certain point, somebody, not us, is going to have to defend themselves when they are in the Strait of Hormuz, because we don't get any oil from there. Therefore, we don't really need to care. The rest of you all need your oil from the Strait of Hormuz. So you know what? You might want to actually step up and do something, because when push comes to shove, we may just not be there for you, right? Again, here he is speaking this week about NATO. You start to put two and two together, and this does not look very good for NATO. Not very good at all.
All of the NATO allies agreed with us, but they don't want to, you know, despite the fact that we help them so much. We have thousands of soldiers in different countries all over the world, and they don't want to help us. We don't need help. You know, that war has been long prosecuted as far as I'm concerned, almost from day one. We knocked out many of these things. We knocked out the Navy essentially in a couple of days. But I was surprised to see that NATO, while they agreed that it was a very important thing to do, they agree fully. Nobody said, oh, you shouldn't do it. They would have had a nuclear weapon within 1 month of when we had the B-2 bombers bomb the nuclear potential. I call it the nuclear dust. NATO's making a very foolish mistake, and I've long said that, you know, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test, because we don't need them, but they should have been there.
In other words, NATO, you failed, big time, big fat F on that one. NATO, you're running out of options. You know, and you're right, by the way, the last Boy Scout, forgive me, pointing out in the chat here, China's the one, right, that needs that oil from the Strait. You better believe it. China needs it. South Korea needs it. Some of Europe, but mostly Asia really relies on that. And so when all of that gets cut off, India needs it. Hey, yeah, we're looking at higher oil prices. You better believe it. Here is John Bolton saying, you know, hey, Europeans, you might want to be a little more cautious about this. You know, and John Bolton, by the way, has never met a war he didn't like. So take him with a grain of salt. But he also loves NATO, and he wants Donald Trump to stay part of NATO, and he knows that Trump's looking at it going, you know, what you doing for me? Nothing much lately. And so what does that mean for Ukraine? Huh? Watch.
But I will say I think the Europeans make a mistake by responding to that kind of juvenile behavior with juvenile behavior of their own. A number of European leaders, including Kaja Kallas, the European Union's chief foreign policy official, have said expressly, Iran is not our war. That's a very dangerous way to put it, because it invites Donald Trump. It almost teases him to come back and say, well, okay, Iran is not your war. Ukraine is not our war. It's very dangerous to approach Trump in the same way he behaves.
Aha. Because, yeah, he could just say, I really don't need this, right? So somebody got through to the Europeans. Perhaps John Bolton, with all his CNN appearances, had somebody over in the big, European Union watching, because all of a sudden, think about this flip-flop that they did. As soon as Donald Trump said what he said, and that was on St. Patrick's Day when he first brought this up, like, gee, they're really not there for us, are they? And now he's just continued to ding them every single day, with the most recent being what I just showed you at the top of the clip there. Listen, he's over it. He's over NATO, and now NATO's starting to figure it out because the head of NATO just came out and said this. No, we're working on it. We're working on it. Give us a minute.
Of the ballistic missiles, of the nuclear capability is severely degraded. When it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, I've been in contact with many allies. We all agree, of course, that strait has to open up again. And what I know is that allies are working together, discussing how to do that. What is the best way to do it? They are working on that collectively to find a way forward.
Okay. Well, we're still waiting. So you keep thinking. And maybe have, some of your guys back off a little in Spain and in the UK, like maybe just, not slam us as much as you love to slam us. Rob and I, as I said, did a whole thing on the Strait of Hormuz, and you should go check that out. Also, we revealed to you the name of the company. I mean, we don't always win like this. This has been a really, really good. One of my team members who helps me cut the chapters that we send out on the show was looking at this. He's like, Trish, this is wild. And I'm like, yeah, it's been good. And we've been very lucky. And we try to always beat the S&P. We're very thoughtful. There's a ton of work that goes into picking the stocks that are in each of these portfolios. And then, of course, one of the recent ones that we put in the 76 report was we wanted you to have it, and we put it in both two of these portfolios, and then we talked about it on the podcast. So go look at the podcast there at 76 Research, the 76 Research report on our at 76 Research channel. This is important, right? I want you to invest for your future, for sure. The president today coming out and just saying it. You know what? This is going pretty well. Pretty darn well, I think for all intents and purposes, we've effectively won this thing. I mean, they're like kaput. They got nothing. Bupkis, right? Like that military. Bye.
I think we've won. We've knocked out their Navy, their Air Force. We've knocked out their anti-aircraft. We've knocked out everything. We're roaming free. From a military standpoint, all they're doing is clogging up the strait. But from a military standpoint, they're finished.
From a military standpoint, they're finished, And they tried. They had all that fancy, expensive Russian and Chinese equipment, and you'd think that, they might be able to do something with it. But nope, here's the president again today.
It's amazing. It's not, I don't want to get too crazy here.
Gosh darn it, you can't hear that, can you? You know what? We'll come back to that one. The president today, this is how you know it's a live show, guys. And I'm listening to these clips with you in real time alongside you. So that's the president saying, you know what? They had terrific equipment, but for whatever reason, we got that soundbite in and the audio levels were not adjusted. So as we speak, on the fly, because, hey, there's nothing wrong with multitasking. You learn this as a mom of 3 children who also works full-time and has her own business. You learn to multitask like you wouldn't believe. So the president speaking then today and saying, hey, you know what? They had all the fancy stuff, but ultimately none of it mattered. None of it mattered because they did not have what we have, and that is the very special might of the incredible U.S. military. I mean, he's not putting their equipment down. It was sophisticated. It was good, but they didn't have the people, right, to run it, and ultimately that's a real game changer. Here he is. We can hear this one.
It's amazing. It's not. I don't want to get too crazy here. Not a contest. It's not even a contest.
Oh, but it is. With him, it's always a contest. Here we go.
They do whatever they want. They can't. They had a lot of great equipment, Russian equipment, Chinese equipment. They had plenty of money. That equipment was useless against us. Useless.
No force on earth can beat the American sailors or the American military. We're the strongest in the world by far. To those standing behind me who...
Yeah, no one can beat us, right? Strongest in the world by far. And yet, the Iranians, you know, they're clinging on to something. I mean, not for long. I mean, their bank accounts are all getting shut off. You heard the Treasury Secretary say they're fleeing left and right because they realize it's worth defecting if they want to keep any of what they have. Again, the U.S. is in charge in that department. So the Supreme Leader, number 3, you know, the son of the first one, they had an interim one in. Apparently the father never even wanted this kid. He's 50-something, but this kid who allegedly suffered from impotency, and maybe that was just because he didn't like the ladies so much, but for whatever reason, the father did not want him in charge of Iran, allegedly because he just wasn't that smart. That was sort of the word on the street anyway within the intel community. But I want to go to this new report coming out because apparently the Supreme Leader has issued another message to let you know he's alive and well. Of course, nobody's seen him. The word on the street is he's in a coma in the Sina Hospital in the Tehran hospital district there. Apparently, he had one of his legs blown off and again, is allegedly in a coma, but somehow manages to tweet from a coma. Forgive me. I'm finding it sort of funny. Which it may, in fact, be, you know, the IRGC, which actually controls everything anyway, and the Ayatollah is sort of just this, like, puppet. And so it's probably, if you ask me, someone from the IRGC that has taken over the X account. It took them a while. I mean, if I were them, I would have actually had somebody in there working on that X account a little earlier than this. But nonetheless, here they are with their new statement being read to us, courtesy of our friends over at Fox News.
Meanwhile, inside Iran, the country marking the Persian New Year. The new supreme leader remains out of sight, not publicly seen since taking power. Instead, a message released and read by state media where he denied strikes on neighboring countries, Turkey and Oman, saying, quote, "This is a trick that the Zionist enemy is using the false flag trick to create division between the Islamic Republic and its neighbors." And that wasn't the only thing the Supreme Leader had to say. Fox News senior correspondent Mike Tobin is live in Tel Aviv with the very latest. Hey, Mike.
Okay, so then Mike goes on to tell us bravely from Tel Aviv that, you know, the Twitter account's back up and running and they claim he's out there, but, you know, nobody's seen him. So, you know, I hate to point out the obvious, but if he were actually alive and well, I think we would have seen him by now. Just saying. Ooh, the Democrats are terrified because remember how I told you the Treasury has all this say and power over bank accounts that somebody might have in the Middle East, like those Iranians, or like any bank account that Ilhan Omar and the hubby may have had overseas. And all the overseas accounts are like, here you go, here you go, here you go. Well, the president's figuring out that, you know, maybe he has a little bit of power over whether or not somebody who is here illegally should have a bank account or not. So this is the new debate du jour because he's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to back off, you know, some of this very aggressive going after, such as what we saw in Minneapolis, right? With Kristi Noem, he's putting Markwayne Mullin in, who's got maybe a little bit of a softer approach to this. Not really softer, but, you know, when suddenly Tom Homan is your softie, I guess Kristi was, you know, really right out in front. So they're scaling this back, and the word is, you know, he wants it to be sort of handled a little bit more eloquently. He wants to go after the real bad guys, the people that have committed the crimes. He doesn't want to just be doing these giant sweeps, but he is saying something else alongside the way, which is that I don't really think somebody who's here in this country illegally should be able to have a bank account. So get ready for some fireworks because the Democrats will say this is wrong too. In a way, it's actually brilliant politics because you keep backing them into a corner. They're defending everyone really that they shouldn't, while not defending American citizens themselves. Here's the report from CNN.
Trump could soon force banks to take part in an immigration crackdown. What I mean by that is sources tell CNN the administration is considering requiring financial institutions to collect and verify their customers' citizenship status, something banks aren't currently required to do. One source says the new policy could come through an executive order.
and come through an executive order. Okay. So we'll see what happens. He'll be challenged on that from a constitutionality standpoint, but he might say, hey, you're Bank of America. You're Bank of America. You ought to be able to prove that somebody is here in this country legally or in a country anywhere legally, right? Because, hey, you're from Germany or Switzerland. You're certainly welcome to open a Bank of America account, but we should know that you're from Germany or Switzerland. I remember I was a student. I told you I have a music background, right? And so I was studying in Graz, Austria one summer. I was studying opera and classical music, and Graz, Austria is amazing. Back then it was amazing. I don't know if it's so amazing anymore. Things have changed considerably. I know that, but I had a bank account there. I had a bank account, and I went in and, had to present all my information, my passport, this, that, and the other, even just to cash a traveler's check. You had to give them all this information. And so I've always wondered, how do you get a bank account in the US of A if you don't have any of this information? If you don't show, say, your Mexican passport, how are you going to get a bank account? How do they really know who you are? But I guess none of it matters, right? Because you can even get a license in many, many, many states here in the United States of America, even if you don't have any identification. So it's rather peculiar to me because I just know that I'm not allowed to, say, go to Mexico and vote in their elections, nor go to Mexico and just open a bank account with no ID. But for some reason, it doesn't work the other way around. It's kind of like the UN analogy, right? You got to be there for us, but we're never going to be there for you, right? Everywhere else in the world, they have ID for voting in elections. Even Somalia just instituted this, or for getting a bank account. But for some reason, in the US of A, it is one giant free-for-all. I'm sorry, it's not going to work that way anymore. We got to have rules, all right? Rules, rules, rules. He was elected for a reason. People were sick and tired of what was going on. They're also sick and tired of this god-awful media, right? This god-awful media that's only presenting one side of the equation at all times. And they're just having a field day right now because, they got bombs going off. So this is just perfect. This is absolutely what it's almost as good for them as March 2020 and COVID-19, right? Where they really got to hate on him every day and scare the living you-know-what out of everybody. So now you get a fired CNN host flipping out, going and testifying before Congress today because he's terrified Scott Jens is going to get his job. I'm not kidding. He's literally terrified of that. This is what he said on his podcast the other day. This is the fired White House correspondent who eventually translated into some kind of anchor gig at that god-awful CNN. Watch.
Do we want Scott Jennings anchoring the CBS Evening News or anchoring AC 360 and talking about what a great president Donald Trump is and how he's the best president since George Washington and Abraham Lincoln? What kind of crazy Stranger Things upside down world are we going to become if that's the kind of news and information that we have pumping out over the airwaves in this country? It sounds to me that that's exactly what Donald Trump wants. All you have to do is go inside his twisted mind. Just the other day, he was tweeting about sending a hospital boat to Greenland. He can't even stay awake at his own events. Please. And this is the guy who's gonna cow these giant media properties into combining into one another and becoming propaganda arms of his administration. What kind of crazy 1984 shit?
Ooh, sorry. Oh my gosh. He's trying to make it on his own. I know. It takes some talent, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, talent with a capital T to be out here on your own. Thank you very much. And you got to have a little pizzazz, a little personality. And unfortunately, he seems to be lacking all of the above. So we wish him well. You know what? The more the merrier. Bring it on over. And look, cream rises to the top, and he's definitely not the cream. So he is, however, extremely outspoken and willing to be a puppet for the left, which is begging him to spout his views on literally anything associated with the media. Now, you have a big merger going down, right? You've got David Ellison, who is the son of Larry, and my sources tell me that know him quite well. He's quite brilliant and has all these great ideas on how he's going to take the media forward. I have a lot of ideas on that too, shall we say, and I actually think there's a tremendous opportunity for somebody who's really smart who comes into CNN and says, wait a second, it's one thing for me to bring the news to you, but what if I could bring you to the news? I mean, I'm talking about the metaverse, right? 3.0. I'm talking about those goggles that they have, and like you could actually be on the front lines seeing things in real time. Some might question the ethics of it. I get it. You know, there's some questions around that, but think about if you actually were in the news, and that's where we're heading, right? I have this whole theory that we're going to go into your TV room in your house. We're actually going to have all of this sort of in 3D around you. So that's the future. I think David gets that. And I think he sees CNN as an opportunity for that reason. And yet everybody's freaking out because these news organizations are terrified of change. And so you also have the Democrats freaking out because all of a sudden CNN is maybe being forced to present both sides of a story. God forbid they present both sides of a story rather than this Jimmy guy's version of whatever he thinks. And so they brought him in to testify to try and get somebody to slow down this merger. This merger is happening, okay? Full stop. It is happening. So get used to it, guys. Anyway, the guy was like back making the rounds today on Capitol Hill with his congressional testimony. But we had sort of a dual thing going on because simultaneously the president was out there thanking one Brandon Carr, head of the FCC, who's bringing it and then some. I mean, he's actually forcing some of these news organizations to be fair. I haven't seen that in I don't know, since forever.
I also want to thank FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, perhaps the most powerful man in this room. You are doing some job. He's trying to keep the fake news, he's trying to make the fake news real and respected again, which is not an easy job, but you're doing a really amazing job. First time that's happened in 25 years, so I congratulate you and everybody in the room. Everybody in this whole country is watching what you're doing, and we appreciate it. When a man can get elected in a landslide, winning think of it, 7 swing states, win them all. We win the popular vote. We win the electoral college by a tremendous amount. We win the counties by 82 or 84%. And I got no good press. Think of it. Only one thing. That only means one thing. These people are not respected. They're just not respected. And we have to have a press that's respected. When you can win an election where they say that I got 94% bad press. Think of it. The other side got 94% good press. When they can get 94% and you win in a landslide, that means the press is not respected. People have no confidence in. So you're doing a fantastic job.
Brendan Carr is. I mean, he's scared the living daylights out of ABC. You got new ownership there at CNN and CBS. It's about to happen at CNN because, again, Paramount, which bought CBS, and CBS is like, what? You have somebody who actually likes the president running our news organization now. We have this woman who came in who ran the opinion page at the New York Times. Now, by the way, I would say she's got her work cut out for her. Barry Weiss, this is not easy. Print reporters, they are a day in the park compared to TV reporters. These TV reporters have these giant size egos, and they don't have a whole lot to back it up. So I will wish you well. And they also are extremely rigid and extremely left. So I've worked in that newsroom. I've worked in all the newsrooms. I've worked at NBC, ABC, where I was a economic guest that would go on with them. But I was a full-on reporter at CBS, at NBC. I've worked at cable, at CNBC, at Bloomberg, at Fox, and Fox Business. Trust me, I've been there, done that, seen that, and I know exactly where they're all coming from. I think all of them are difficult places. CBS has such a cultural institution that it's going to be very hard to break that. There's a bias that's embedded in people, and there's also, as I said, a rigidity. They don't want to change. They don't want new things. When I got there, it was 2005? And I had a rotary dial phone in my office. In fact, I took over Jim Costa's office. I painted it red for some reason. Or maybe he had the red and I left it red. I can't remember, but it was a red office. Yeah, it might have been his choice. Maybe that wasn't mine. I know I had pale yellow in mine originally, but anyway, it was a rotary dial phone in 2005. Okay, so they're very rigid, and I know that they didn't make much money, and it was sort of the business that nobody wanted to be in over there at CBS. But come on, you can't even upgrade the phones for goodness sakes. Nope. We had speaker phones that looked like Charlie's Angels. Like they were the old-fashioned kind from Charlie's Angels. So CBS is going to be a very new place, provided Barry can get it there, provided David Ellison is going to give her the rope to get it there. I think Barry's going to have to just like fire everyone because I don't think it's really going to work. And then you get this clown, okay? And I'm sorry, but he was a good reporter at one point, but just... And I should not be so harsh because there's a place for this. There absolutely is. There's a place for all kinds of opinion in the podcasting world, okay? Over here on YouTube, we get to, I wear my heart on my sleeve, oopsie daisy. And I also like fling my hands around a lot and sometimes even hit the microphones. If you're listening, I apologize for that. That's what happens when you're having fun. So I would say that there is a place, right, for somebody like Jim Acosta and Joy Reid and Don Lemon. I mean, not my taste, thank you very much. I wouldn't watch them, but they probably have, there's a place for everyone. The problem is in network television, and this is this distinction that Brendan Carr keeps making over and over and over again, and I keep trying to inform you guys of, because people say, oh, it's a restriction of the First Amendment. No, it's not, because broadcast television lives by a different set of rules. They are governed by the FCC, the organization that Brendan Carr now runs, and they have a duty to their community to present fair news. And so if you're not doing that, then yes, the FCC has the ability to come in and run right over them, frankly, and say, guys, get your act together. If you're not going to put both sides on, if the coverage is 99% all liberal bias, then we're going to have to do something about it, period. Full stop, end of story. But don't tell that to Jimmy, because Jimmy's just worried that Scott Jennings is going to take over his own time slot. That's what this one's about. Watch at Capitol Hill.
What should it tell us about what will happen to CNN if the same management takes over that institution?
Well, Senator, as I stated in my remarks, and just this morning, the staff at CBS News received a note from Barry Weiss, the president of CBS News, informing them of this massive round of layoffs, which is going to really cripple that news organization, that same news division I worked for many years ago, the same news division of Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather and Edward R. Murrow. And it is now under the ownership of a family that is very closely aligned with Donald Trump. And so there are a couple of things that I think will happen. One is, if this same family is allowed to own CNN, they will combine those two news organizations, and we'll see another round of massive layoffs that will put journalists out of work. And not just the folks who are on the air, photographers like the ones that we see here, producers who work behind the scenes, technical crews who put these shows on the air, bureaus that are located around the world. Look what Jeff Bezos has done with the Washington Post, closing bureaus and offices and places around the world that are now very important.
All right, cry some more. Cry all day long. I don't think anybody really cares. And it's almost like Donald Trump and Brendan Carr are single-handedly trying to teach these news organizations how to have a better product. Because when you show the other side, and you have like an honest presentation of both sides, you're going to bring in more peeps. You just are. Like, that's the law of averages, right? You're broadening your appeal. You guys haven't really been very appealing to many people. And fortunately, there's like folks like me over here, right? Like, you guys can come over here and watch like something that is not insane and way more fun. Trust me, we have way, way more fun over here any day of the week. I do want to mention, somebody mentioned Chuck Norris, who has just passed away, and he was just a legend, right? Just such a legend. I was so fortunate to have him on my show a couple of times when I was at Fox. He would make the rounds. I remember actually spending quite a bit of time with him on the night of the inauguration in, first round, the inauguration for Donald Trump. I was at one of the balls there, and I was broadcasting from the ball, and Chuck Norris was there all dressed up in his tuxedo, and he was dynamite. He came by and I was like, wow, this guy's just fantastic. I could talk to him all day long. He just lit up the screen with his enthusiasm, his excitement. He was one of the first to come out there and be so positive about our now 47th president. But that was on the 45th round. I wanted to play a little sound for you. He, I guess, used to be a Democrat, and he changed. He changed his mind. Watch. Okay, with gremlins at work. We'll try again.
Why are you a conservative, sir?
Well, I used to be a Democrat, but unfortunately the Democrats went too far to the left, and the Republicans moved into their position that the Democrats were 40 years ago. See, and so what the Democrats believed 40 years ago, the Republicans believe today. And so I realized that I had to go to a Republican because the Democrats just got too far off the trail. They just got completely off the trail and lost all reality of what America stood for. And so I realized that Republicans at this point in time are more focused on what is best for America than what the Democrats are.
Yeah. It's so sad. He's no longer here with us. Rest in peace, Chuck Norris. What a terrific actor, comedian, and person, and willing to take chances, because that was at a time when very few. Scott Baio came on that night too. He was there at the ball at the inauguration. It was like you could just count them on like one hand, the amount of Hollywood people that would come out for this president. It was so hard for them because it's career suicide. So they were very reluctant, but these guys stood up when nobody else was willing to. And they said, this is what I believe in. I think he's going to do a good job. And they were terrific, and Chuck especially, and he will be dearly missed. I'm looking at all of your comments, and yeah, we got a lot of Chuck fans in here. Rest in peace, as you all say. And it's good to have so many of you here. Thank you for everything that you do. A reminder, my other company, right? You know, I'm hard at work. I never stop working. 76 Research, we've had some great luck, a great run there at 76research.com. So if you're starting to invest, or you just, you want to get invested somehow, we don't do this for you. We don't touch your money. It's just research. So I feel very strongly about that. Just giving you the tools so that you can get started and make the right decisions, because you want to understand what it is that you are investing. Thank you again for being here. Make sure you subscribe and share, and tell a friend. Tell a friend. Let me know. I check all your comments every night before I go to bed. I read them all. So please let me know what you think, and I'll see you right back here live on Monday, if not over the weekend. We got lots more content coming your way. Have a good one, guys.